Well, fellas, the coolest thing has happened. Ashes of the Imperium has officially leaked, and the lore inside this book is absolutely insane. This was supposed to be the first book of the Scouring, set to drop on December 16th, 2025. But it looks like someone cracked open the Games Workshop vault a little too early. Massive shout out to Stub Abable, the absolute legend who uploaded this to Reddit. A true cow hero.
You're one of those heroes, aren't you?
The Emperor might not approve, but I sure do, and so does the entire internet. This leak gives us our first real look at the aftermath of the Siege of Terra. The Loyalists scrambling to rebuild, the traitors retreating from the Sol system, and most importantly, the shattered state of the Emperor after his duel with the bald menace himself, Horus Lupercal. Before we dive into this, a little announcement. I will be doing a giveaway on Ashes of the Imperium. So if you want a free copy, leave a like, comment which 40k book is your favorite down in the comment section, and make sure you're subscribed and in the Discord. I'll announce the winner in 1 week on 11/21 on both my YouTube and in my Discord. Good luck to all the cows participating. I love my herd, so I hope to do even more giveaways in the month of December. In today's video though, we're breaking down everything we know about the Ashes of the Imperium leaks. The plot reveals the most important emerging plot lines, how it reshapes 40k lore, and what it means for the future of the Scouring. And now, my beloved herd, you all know what time it is. Grab some 2% milk and a plate of freshly cooked chocolate chip cookies because it's time to enter the cow hole and uncover the Ashes of the Imperium. Alright, before we dive headfirst into the meat of the leak, let's talk about where this came from. I got this straight from r/40k lore, and I'll be including a link to the Reddit post down in the description. So if you want to check it out for yourself, go ahead and give it a read. It was posted by Stub Abable about 4 days ago, and honestly, it looks pretty authentic. He said he found it at a Frankfurt book fair and was able to buy the German version, which is both incredibly lucky and absolutely incredible. The warp truly has blessed this fella. The guys even got an actual photo of the book cover and a bookmark peeking out in one of the pictures. You really can't fake that kind of dedication. Now without further ado, let's jump straight into the leaked plot. And brace yourself, because from what I've seen so far, this book has some crazy reveals. The book takes place immediately following the Siege of Terra, in the chaotic and fragmented aftermath of the Horus Heresy. It is structured through multiple perspectives, each offering a unique window into the chaos of both Loyalist and traitor forces, with none of the Primarchs or Custodes serving as POV characters, which I have to admit is pretty disappointing. But I trust Chris Wright. He is the GOAT who wrote Scars, The Path of Heaven, and Warhawk after all. The POVs include Julita, a traitor guard demagogue, Archimus of the Imperial Fist, Titus Praetor, the Ultramarines Chief Librarian, Khalid Hassan, and the other members of Malkador's Chosen, Ortak, Theokon, an Iron Warrior, Adra Harsis, a Wordbearer, and Vardish Krya, Chief Apothecary of the Sons of Horus. So we have quite an array of different perspectives with several loyalists and traitors in the mix, which I think is a great idea. Now, let's get to the leaked plot. The book opens with Ortak Theokon, the Iron Warrior's point of view, depicting their desperate struggle to escape Terra in the aftermath of the siege. Their objective is to regroup and rebuild somewhere safe. Parallel to this, the traitor guard POV through Julita shows her and the other traitor guardsmen fleeing the palace and the Himalayan plain in search of refuge. They stumble upon abandoned troop transports and use them to escape, navigating through the palace's toxic rubble, described as a vast desert of ruins and poison. As they journey, they encounter a kilometer-wide waterfall of blood and other chemical runoff cascading from the palace into the lowlands, a scene that triggers a rare crisis of faith for Julita. Despite her role as a demagogue who has converted multiple hive cities to chaos, she begins to question the dark gods, whose presence seems to have withdrawn from the warp. The traitor guardsmen soon arrive at a gore-filled field where hundreds of thousands of corpses are planted like crops. Julita reflects on whether this blood-soaked devotion still serves a purpose. Eventually, Julita's group comes upon a small village in search of food. Confronted by the surviving villagers, she declares them guilty for defying the true gods, attempting to justify her actions. Unfortunately for her and her companions, they are beaten to death, showing the waning influence of chaos in the immediate post-siege galaxy.
That's rough, buddy.
We then return to the Iron Warriors, who have escaped into orbit aboard a Thunderhawk and run into Adraharsis and his wordbearers in the void between Terra and Luna. The Iron Warriors request permission to land their Thunderhawk, and after some debate, the wordbearers allow them on board. Soon after, the ship is attacked by Ultramarine void ships. The Iron Warriors weaponize their Thunderhawk, programming its machine spirit to harass the Ultramarines, buying time for the traitors to deactivate their systems and silently slip through the void. While running silent through the Sol system, the traitors pass the combined fleet of the Dark Angels and the Space Wolves. The Wordbearers attempt to commune with the Dark Gods, but the warp is profoundly calm after Horus's death. They eventually receive faint messages from the Dark Gods saying, "Don't run and search for a place with thin walls."
What the f does that mean, Kobe Bryant?
You're welcome.
Navigating towards the Elysian Gate near Uranus, and the ship is attacked by the Ultramarines again. Their ship is destroyed, forcing the surviving Wordbearers and Iron Warriors to leap towards a ruined defense platform, resulting in them losing some personnel along the way. There they discover an abandoned Blood Angels transporter. Though tensions remain high, the two traitor groups board the new ship and set a course for Neptune. We then learn that as the Wordbearers had conquered the Sol system, they had landed on nearly every celestial body in the Sol system to construct shrines and cathedrals, intending to transform the system into a galactic shrine to the Dark God's will. Adraharsis hopes Neptune has remained untouched, but finds that the Ultramarines have already cleansed it and its moons. Yet he notices that the mass of one of the small moons does not match the destruction they see with their eyes, revealing a warp illusion, a subtle sign that the Dark Gods persist. After exchanging secret codes, the ship is allowed to land on the hidden moon, despite detecting enemy ships near Neptune. Back on Terra, Archimedes awakens from a deep sleep, one long overdue after months of unbroken vigilance during the siege. Upon waking, he is disorientated, unsure of his identity or purpose. As he wanders the palace, he encounters Ultramarines and workers from Ultramar, prompting suspicion over their convenient arrival and dominance over the palace. The journey to Dorn's chamber is complicated by permanent structural shifts in the palace, rendering rooms and hallways unpredictable and creating hazards. Along the way, Archimedes encounters iPhone Ire, who expresses hope for greater respect for the Sisters of Silence Order and the eventual liberation of their home, Luna. Archimedes reassures her that the Sisters of Silence will get the respect for their role during the Siege of Terra. Meeting Dorn, he finds the Primarch deflated and exhausted. Dorn acknowledges Guilliman's foresight in preparing food and medicine before the siege, lamenting that the hero of the siege is the one that rescues, not the one who defends. Dorn emphasizes that chaos has not been destroyed and urges immediate action to eliminate the traitors. But Guilliman prefers a cautious reconquest of Luna and Mars. Dorn also reveals in their conversation the Emperor's grievous condition, noting the uncertainty of what the Emperor commanded before being placed on the Golden Throne, which is an absolute insane lore drop, guys. Dorn also orders Archimedes to assist in rebuilding and to attempt swaying the Lion and Lehman Russ to their cause. So right off the bat, they're setting up Dorn vs. Guilliman. Dorn wants to immediately go after the traitors, and Guilliman wants to secure the Sol system first. We then meet our next POV, Titus Praetor, the chief librarian of the Ultramarines, who is tasked by Guilliman to find Vulcan and secure his loyalty for the Primarch's council. During his POV, we once again see that the warp is unnervingly calm, as his psycho abilities are completely limited. Titus tracks down Vulcan outside the palace, where Vulcan is violently executing the remnants of the Emperor's children, tearing out their augmented organs before killing his foes. Titus assists him in one fight before Vulcan departs for the palace. Returning to the palace to see Guilliman, Titus notes the unusual behavior of the Blood Angels, who are reclusive and reserved. He then runs into a custodian guarding Guilliman's chamber. And this is the first time we see a female custodian in the 30K era. Her armor is battle-worn and her face is scarred beyond belief. They have a brief conversation where her stoic facade cracks for just a moment, showing that whatever has happened to the Emperor has shook her and the other custodians to the core. Titus and Guilliman meet, And Gilliman reassures Titus that consolidating Luna and Mars is a higher priority than immediate retribution against the traitors. He even suggests that the warp's current absence supports the theory that the dark gods are neutralized. We are then introduced to the remaining Malcador's Chosen, who are leaderless after his death and are meeting to grapple with the political instability affecting the Imperium. Khalid Hassan seeks to continue Malcador's vision of an Imperium led by the people, and apparently one of the chapter's opening quotes reflects that the greatest loss the Imperium suffered was not the Emperor, but Malcador himself. Had he survived, he might have held the Imperium together and prevented the grim timeline that has led to our current 40K era. Wow, I'm definitely not crying right now. It's definitely you guys. After the meeting, Hassan gains access to the Imperial dungeon and witnesses the Emperor's terrifying state. He is described as an eldritch horror seated upon the golden throne, manifested as a screaming one-eyed skull, encased in nightmarish black and gray machinery. An additional note here is that in the leak it is stated that only 20% of the throne and its chamber remains intact after the siege, and the Mechanicum deems full repair is impossible. The Golden Throne itself is described as a nightmare of interlocking black and gray machinery, with the Emperor seated between two spiked hemispheres exuding an aura of agony and despair. Oh my god, that sounds so rough, fellas. The next scene depicts a meeting of the Senatorium Imperialis, comprising representatives from the Administrative, Astra Telepathica, the Arbites, the Astra Militarum, the Chancellor of the Exquire, the Paternova, and Nyora Sukasan, who is the Grand Admiral of the Imperial Navy. During this gathering, Hassan attempts to persuade the mortal senators to support Gilliman's actions, recognizing that all of his Primarch brothers favor launching a new crusade immediately, a move that would naturally sway the vote against him. This moment presents a rare opportunity for humanity to assert independence from the Primarchs and the Space Marines. However, lacking the backing and explicit threat of Malcador, Hassan fails to sway the assembly. All the senators ultimately declare their intent to vote in favor of Dorn. While this is occurring, Archimus travels to the Phalanx to meet with Bjorn of the Space Wolves and Corswain of the Dark Angels, attempting to sway them to Dorn's new crusade. Both confirm that the Lion and Lehman will likely support Dorn's decision. Archimus then learns of the new process of making Space Marines. The process now erases independent thought and personality while amplifying hatred towards the traitors, resulting in only a 20% survival rate, a method that is supported by both Dorn and Gilliman. And then we finally reach the biggest part of the whole book, the Primarch's Council. The Primarchs finally convene for the Council to decide to either launch a new crusade or solidify control of the Sol System, with Titus being the main POV of this part of the book. And here we get a glimpse at the state of each of the Loyalist Primarchs at the Council. No Corvus Corax though, which makes me incredibly sad. Sorry Bird Boys, you guys got fucked over yet again. Are you surprised at this point? Because I'm not. GW hates the Raven Boys. But of the Primarchs assembled, Leman Russ and the Lion appear to have already reconciled, dismissing the Lion stabbing Leman Russ in the book Leman Russ the Great Wolf as sibling bickering. Dorn remains stoic, Vulcan is unreadable, and the Khan has only recovered enough to attend briefly. He is missing an eye, much of his face and body is covered in synthetic skin, and he requires support from 2 white scars to stand. Raldoron represents Sanguinius, and Valdor remains silent and expressionless throughout the meeting. The debate quickly centers on the Imperium's next move. Dorn demands an immediate crusade, while Gilliman urges careful rebuilding and preparation. Initially, the other Primarchs seem to side with Dorn, bolstering his confidence, but the mortal senators of the Senatorium Imperialis unexpectedly vote for Gilliman, forcing even the Lion and the remaining Primarchs to accept the decision. Dorn is stunned, but ultimately compelled to follow Gilliman's plan. Equally shocked with the Senate's sudden change of vote, Hassan tasks the agents of Malcador with uncovering who orchestrated the Senator's shift and investigating the sudden emergence of new Arbite forces. Meanwhile, Dorn, frustrated that Gilliman underestimates chaos, orders Archimus and other Imperial Fist forces to comb the Sol System for lingering warp corruption. Before departing, Archimus arranges for Cinderman to receive authority to collect and study every text on chaos, initiating a covert effort to understand and counter its hidden dangers. Archimus ventures into the void, seeking signs of chaos. He encounters destroyed traitor ships, the decapitated heads of Space Marines on board, and eventually finds Sigismund's ship. Sigismund's throne room is fucking badass as hell, guys. It's filled with candles and the decapitated heads of traitor champions. Sigismund confirms that no sorcery has been detected in the Sol system, and that he intends to hunt down as many traitors as possible.
Oh my god, he's so goddamn cool!
Archimus continues to Neptune, noting anomalies in a moon's mass. On Luna, Vardesh Krya, chief apothecary of the Sons of Horus, has created 70,000 feral space marines during the siege and prepares for the approaching ultramarine assault. These unstable, Thunder Warrior-like troops are primed to inflict maximum casualties on the Loyalists, while Titans, trenches, and orbital defenses strengthen the fortress's formidable position. The Ultramarines' assault on Luna begins, supported by the Blood Angels and Salamanders. Wave after wave is ambushed by Sons of Horus, Feral Marines, and Titans. Titus witnesses the fighting and notes the Blood Angels' peculiar restraint and reclusiveness. Even with the traitors' fierce resistance, the Loyalists steadily gain ground, encircling the central spire of the fortress. In the intense fighting, Titus manages to unleash a psychic shockwave, confirming residual warp energy. The Loyalists finally breach the final chamber to find a massive black gate in an abyss containing countless unknown black ships. Krya of the Sons of Horus leads a final desperate assault, cutting through Loyalist champions, and even achieves a brief victory over an Ultramarine commander before finally falling to Titus himself in a climactic duel. Then we return back to Hassan, who has learned a troubling truth. Gilliman is working closely with the Sisters of Silence, has leveraged their influence to secure the Administratum support, as no branch of the Imperium can function without it. Their goal is to seize Luna and the black ships stationed there before they fall into enemy hands. Their urgency stems from the Emperor's dire condition. Despite the efforts of the Sisters of Silence, the Custodes, and Valdor himself, the Emperor's wounds remain unhealed, and he can't use the Golden Throne, which now consumes a massive amount of energy without yielding any real benefit. With the Emperor incapacitated, the Imperium must feed Psykers to the throne, making control of the black ships essential. On Neptune's hidden moon, the remaining Wordbearers and Iron Warriors confront the World Eaters, who hold the moon and its mortal population in a constant cycle of crushing labor and torture. This brutal cycle maintains the illusion on the moon, stopping Loyalists from detecting their presence. The Wordbearers then reveal their sacrificial plan: widespread slaughter to reignite the warp and empower the Dark Gods. They have planted multiple such sacrificial sites across the galaxy to provoke a new Loyalist crusade, which would generate hatred and bloodshed necessary to stir the warp and return the Dark Gods to power. They even manage to summon a small demon, though the calm warp demands that for each demon's breath, 100 souls must be sacrificed, and countless more tortured to feel its presence. The demon warns the traitors that the Emperor has nearly destroyed the Chaos Gods when he slew Horus, forcing them into hiding to gather their strength, and hints at a way to destroy them permanently. If all emotions and souls that sustain the Chaos Gods were stripped away, the gods could not reform. Adraharsis notes, however, that every word from the demon is simultaneously truth, metaphor, lie, or all at once, which is a common GW cop-out. Oh my god. The Wordbearers then turn on the Iron Warriors, killing most of them and taking the survivors as prisoners. These remaining Iron Warriors are then tortured at a dark shrine. As Adraharsis argues the righteousness of their plan, the moon is suddenly attacked. A dropship lands and the Wordbearers find themselves face to face with Perturabo, the Lord of Iron. Unknown to all the traitors, Perturabo never left the Sol system. He had been waiting to observe who would emerge victorious in the final assault on Terra. He kills all of the Wordbearers, including the POV Adraharsis, saving Theokon and the remaining Iron Warriors. He then begins to explain his philosophy to the survivors. The warp is a tool, not an object of devotion. Without emotion, he systematically flattens the moon, preventing any chaos influence from taking hold. When the Loyalists arrive, they find a barren, artificially leveled moon with no trace of chaos actively remaining. The book closes with Theokon aboard an Iron Warrior void ship en route to the Mandeville Point, wrestling with this crisis of faith. Bound by loyalty to Perturabo, he questions the morality of his Primarch's path but recognizes the inevitability of obedience. And there you have it, folks. Ashes of the Imperium according to the great Reddit leaks. Overall, the book is centered on the immediate aftermath of the siege, exploring the fragile state of the Imperium, the Primarchs, and the Emperor. From here, several essential plot lines emerge, ones we're about to explore, highlighting what I suspect we'll see in the future and how these developments will shape the broader 40K universe. The first major plotline centers on the Emperor, and things are not looking great for Big Daddy E. It's essentially confirmed that the Emperor never intended to remain on the Golden Throne, and the siege has left him in a state that can only be described as beyond horror. After the council meeting, Hassan gains access to the Imperial dungeon and witnesses the Emperor's terrifying form. A screaming, one-eyed skull encased in nightmarish black and gray machinery. Only 20% of the Golden Throne and its chamber survive the siege, and the Mechanicum believes full restoration is impossible. The throne itself is now described as a nightmare of interlocking, black and gray machinery, with the Emperor seated between two spiked hemispheres, exuding a presence of sheer agony and despair.
Well, we're fucked.
Which, as we all know, is the current state of the Emperor in the current setting, which implies that nothing is going to change from this situation. Well, that is so grim dark. But it seems that Black Library and GW is working towards something here. As in the modern setting, we have received the Vaults of Terra books, which explain that the Golden Throne is going to fail in the next 100 years or less. Given the recent revelations about the Emperor's lore, the Dark King, the Star Child, his encounter with Mortarion, and the clashes with Nurgle during the Plague Wars, it looks like all these threads are finally converging. We might finally get a conclusion on the Emperor's current state in 40K. The book also provides a crucial insight into the state of chaos following the siege. According to the leaks, the Chaos Gods are nearly dormant, hiding deep within the warp after being almost destroyed by the Emperor when he obliterated Horus. Which is a huge power scaling upscale, folks. This revelation reframes the current threat. While chaos remains dangerous, it is not actively influencing the galaxy at the moment. The demon who speaks to the word-bearers even claims that theoretically, the Chaos Gods could be destroyed permanently. Since they are formed from emotions, if one could pull apart all the souls and emotions that sustain them, the gods could cease to exist. But it is noted that the demon could have been lying about all of that. And once again, a classic cop-out move. But this still creates two compelling plot threads for the future of 40K. One, the Chaos Gods can be killed. The Emperor nearly achieved this during the final confrontation with Horus, raising the question if he could do this again against other agents of chaos, like the Demon Primarchs or Abaddon. This could redefine the galaxy's balance of power. And two, the return of chaos in general. While the gods are currently dormant, they will inevitably return. As we see in the current setting, they are fully active. The leak suggests that the new Loyalist Crusades against the traitors will play a role in stirring them back into action, and I suggest that Perturabo's Iron Cage will be a big part of this. As what we know from the already established lore is Dorn will throw his whole legion against a trap arranged by Perturabo during the Iron Cage battle. And I assume emotions like betrayal, anger, and hatred will be reflected into the warp, possibly resulting in the Chaos God's return, which makes me think that Perturabo will ascend to demonhood as he will be the one to kickstart the Chaos God's return. Kind of a fun theory, right guys? This nuanced state of chaos sets up a galaxy poised between near total devastation and the slow rebuilding of both mortal and Primarch-led forces, all while the Dark Gods gather strength in the shadows. The next plot point I want to cover is the current state of Terra after the siege's conclusion. Hinted at multiple times during the Siege of Terra, the Throne World is basically destroyed and decimated after the conclusion of the war. Its landmasses have been shattered, oceans drained or poisoned, and the Imperial Palace itself is left in ruins. Terra's brief immersion in the warp during the siege has left a permanent physical change. The palace is warped, unstable, and teetering on the edge of destruction, reflecting the catastrophic psychic and material damage the planet endured. These effects are likely to ripple through the rest of the Scouring series. exploring how the Imperium adapts or struggles to survive on a planet that is literally on the verge of collapse. The aftermath of the siege also highlights tensions between the Primarchs, particularly Dorn and Guilliman, setting the stage for a future rivalry. Dorn, ever the stalwart defender, wishes to finally go on the offensive and is frustrated by what he perceives as hesitation and caution. Dorn is convinced that chaos remains a pressing, immediate threat and urges swift, decisive action to hunt down the traitors. Guilliman, by contrast, prioritizes careful rebuilding and methodical reconquest, focusing first on Luna and Mars before launching any major offensives. This ideological divide underscores the beginning of a deep philosophical split between the two Primarchs, one driven by duty and vengeance, the other by strategy and long-term stability. What's even more striking is how Chris Wright seems to be laying the foundation for the post-siege rivalry explored in later lore. The tension between Dorn's urgency and Guilliman's caution foreshadows the eventual disagreements over the Codex Astartes and the operational independence of Space Marine chapters, a rift that nearly erupts into a civil war in the old Scouring lore. This subtle setup gives the reader a glimpse of how the Primarchs' personalities and priorities will reshape the Imperium's future. We also see in the aftermath of the siege, the Sisters of Silence portrayed as seeking respect and recognition for their role in the heresy, as they have lost most of their order during the war. However, as later lore in Era of Ruin and Watchers of the Throne, the Emperor's Legion, shows, this respect proves fleeting. During the Great Scouring, the Sisters, particularly those serving in the talons of the Emperor, struggle to replenish their numbers and face mistrust or even open hostility from the wider Imperium due to their nature as blanks. Only the Adeptus Custodes continue to support them, yet even they can't prevent the marginalization of the Sisterhood. Eventually, the Sisters of Silence are largely cast out of the Adeptus Terra, with the notable exception being those who operate the Black Ships. From these developments, it seems clear that the current setup is laying the groundwork for the eventual betrayal and expulsion of the Sisters from the Imperium. Then we come to the Blood Angels, who are also deeply affected by the aftermath of Sanguinius' death and the toll of the Black Rage. In the post-siege period, they appear subdued, depressed, and strangely reclusive. The Blood Angels now primarily keep to themselves, interacting with the Ultramarines or other factions only when absolutely necessary. This period shows them at their lowest point, having lost essentially the heart and soul of their legion with Sanguinius' death. However, I think this is going to be their lowest moment, as the Scouring series will explore their gradual recovery as they eventually confront their trauma, reconnect with their purpose, and rediscover their identity. Another huge plot point are the Custodes, who have been physically and psychologically affected by the Emperor's current state. This trauma has likely reshaped the nature of their order, as until recently, they rarely left Terra following these events. In fact, during the Primarch meeting, we see Valdor, who is present but silent, maintaining a blank-like stare and refusing to act or speak throughout the meeting. This hints at a deeper plotline, potentially connecting his rumored role as the Yellow King, his possession of the Apollonian Spear, an artifact that grants him knowledge from those he slays, may have fractured his mind over the course of the siege as he killed thousands of demons, laying the groundwork for his eventual transformation to the Yellow King. Future stories in the Scouring may explain Valdor's character change and reveal how he ultimately became the Yellow King. The Custodes are shown to be a shattered force after the combined toll of the war in the Webway and the Siege of Terra. Their numbers are diminished, their morale is shaken, and their order appears completely fragmented. In addition, the book finally introduces a female custodian in the 30K era, a revelation that will totally not be controversial as hell. Sigismund continues to demonstrate why he is so goddamn badass, as he has so many decapitated traitor heads just chilling in his throne room. But this book also reveals the future path of the Loyalist Space Marines, mimicking what Karn saw in Sigismund during their duel in the book Warhawk. Going forward, Loyalist Space Marines will now use a new psycho-indoctrination method, which will eliminate free will and create hatred in them for the traitors. The process is also far more extreme, with only 20% of neophytes surviving it. The result will be a generation of warriors with near total loyalty, but stripped of independent thought and the individuality that characterized the Great Crusade era Space Marines. Meanwhile, the traitor legions are already showing signs of disorganization. The siege's aftermath and the loss of key leaders have left them utterly fragmented. Loyalist counterattacks and ongoing purges are accelerating this process, and the cracks within their forces are only going to widen as the Scouring progresses. All of this is setting the stage for the future Legion Wars, which I expect another 15-book series about. GW, you better deliver. The money is there for the taking. These are all the major plot points I've pulled from this book so far. Which of these are your favorite? Which ones are you most excited to see explored in the future Scouring series? Personally, I'm intrigued by the Emperor's current state, the evolving rivalry between Dorn and Guilliman, and the Custodes as a shattered order. Now that we've talked about the potential plotlines in this book, let's talk about the future of the Scouring as a whole. I think the Scouring is going to keep diving deeper into the Emperor's side plot, showing just how dire and potentially irreversible his situation has become. I wouldn't be surprised if this ultimately drives Dorn to snap at the Iron Cage, committing his legion into Perturabo's trap, which could very well set the stage for the Chaos God's return, and maybe even Perturabo's ascension to demonhood. And that is just the tip of the iceberg, fellas. We've still got some absolutely insane events on the horizon. Lionel Johnson facing off against Luther, Vulcan hunting down Fabius Bile, the Khan lost somewhere in the webway, Guilliman clashing with Fulgrim, the shocking death of Conrad Kurz, and the epic battle of Eskandor. The galaxy is primed for chaos, revenge, and some absolutely jaw-dropping confrontations. And that's gonna wrap it up for today's quick lore drop. The Scouring just keeps getting crazier, guys. Regardless of what happens, we're in for one hell of a ride. Massive shout out to my Patreon and YouTube members, Ryania Basket, Ritter S, and Posse Paul, Keydree, Nico149, and William Strong. You guys are the best cows a man could ask for. Seriously, you guys keep the channel flowing, and I could not appreciate you more. Remember, if you guys want to enter the Ashes of the Imperium giveaway, make sure you like this video, drop which 40k book is your favorite, make sure you're subscribed, and join my Discord. Stay milked, my beloved cows, and I'll see you in the next video.